Admiral Tejo stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched another world die. The planet below had been green just 3 days ago. Now it was gray and lifeless. The void swarm had eaten everything. Every tree, every animal, every person. Even the air was gone. "Sir, we have lost contact with Colony 7, reported Captain Yuna from her station. Her voice was steady, but Tejo could hear the fear underneath. Everyone was afraid now. They had been fighting this war for 300 years, and they were losing badly. The Void Swarm was unlike any enemy the Galactic Coalition had ever faced. They were not machines like the old robot wars. They were not another species seeking territory or resources. The swarm was something else entirely. They consumed everything. Planets, ships, people. They turned it all into more of themselves. "How many ships did we lose during the evacuation?" Tejo asked. 14 destroyers and 6 cruisers, Yuna replied. "The swarm bioships adapted to our plasma cannons again. Our weapons barely scratched them." Tejo nodded grimly. It was always the same story. The Coalition would develop a new weapon. It would work for a few battles. Then the swarm would change. Their ships would grow new armor or develop new defenses. Within weeks, the weapon would be useless. Commander Dong-Sik approached the Admiral. His blue skin was pale with exhaustion. The Catherian had not slept in days. None of them had. "Admiral, we need to discuss the new intelligence reports," Dong-Sik said quietly. They moved to the war room where holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Red dots marked swarm-controlled systems. Blue dots showed Coalition territory. 300 years ago, the entire map had been blue. Now red covered more than half of known space. "Show me the latest projections," Tejo said. Dong-Sik activated the computer. Numbers and charts filled the air around them. The statistics were devastating. In the past year alone, the Coalition had lost 47 populated worlds. Over 2 billion sentient beings had been consumed by the swarm. "At our current rate of losses, we will be extinct in 50 cycles, Dong-Sik said. His voice was flat and emotionless. Maybe less if they continue to accelerate their expansion. Tejo studied the numbers. He had been fighting this war since he was a young officer. He had seen the Coalition retreat again and again. Every year they lost more ground. Every year the enemy grew stronger. "What about the new weapons programs?" he asked. The antimatter torpedoes were promising, but the swarm adapted within 3 weeks. The quantum disruptors worked for 1 battle. The gravitational mines lasted 2 days before they figured out how to neutralize them. The door chimed and Captain Yuna entered. "Sir, we have received an emergency transmission from Sanctuary Station. The High Council is calling an emergency session. All fleet commanders are to report immediately. Sanctuary Station was the last great stronghold of the Coalition. It orbited a massive star deep in friendly territory. The station housed the government, the military command, and millions of refugees from conquered worlds. If Sanctuary fell, the war was over. The journey to Sanctuary took 2 days. Tejo spent the time reading reports and trying to find some hope in the endless stream of bad news. His fleet of 30 ships was considered large these days. 300 years ago, a fleet this size would have been called a patrol group. Sanctuary Station was enormous. It had been built to house 50 million beings from dozens of different species. Now it held nearly 3 times that number. Refugees packed every available space. The corridors were crowded with families who had lost their homes to the swarm. The emergency council meeting was held in the Great Assembly Hall. Representatives from every surviving Coalition species were present. Tejo recognized leaders he had not seen in years. Many looked older and more tired than he remembered. High Chancellor Wei Min, the elderly human who led the Coalition government, called the meeting to order. Her gray hair was tied back severely and her face showed the weight of command. "The situation has become critical," she began. "Our latest intelligence indicates that the swarm has accelerated its expansion. They are now consuming 3 to 4 systems per month. Our military advisors believe we have less than 50 cycles before total defeat." A murmur went through the assembly. 50 cycles. Not even 3 years by human reckoning. Tejo had expected it to be bad, but not this bad. General So Young stood up. The Terran military commander was one of the few humans left in positions of power. Her homeworld had been consumed early in the war. "Our weapon development programs have failed," she said bluntly. "The enemy adapts faster than we can innovate. Traditional military solutions are no longer viable." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Ambassador Kyung-ho, representing the Nexari Trade Federation. Evacuation, So Young replied. We identify the most defensible systems, concentrate our remaining forces, and prepare for a long siege. It will buy us time. Time for what? Demanded Counselor Haywan. The swarm does not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They will find us eventually and consume us all. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to fight to the end. Others preferred to scatter and hope some remnants of their civilizations would survive. A few suggested trying to find new galaxies to flee to. Tejo listened but said little. He had heard these same arguments countless times over the years. The coalition was good at talking, but talking had not stopped the swarm. As the debate raged, a technician hurried into the hall and whispered something to Chancellor Wayman. Her expression changed from tired resignation to surprise. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, she announced, we have just received a most unusual report from our long-range sensor networks. The hall fell silent. A fleet of unknown vessels has been detected approaching from the galactic rim. They are broadcasting primitive radio signals and moving at velocities that our scientists say should be impossible without visible propulsion systems. Unknown vessels, asked General So Young. What species? We do not know, Wayman replied. The signals are in languages we have never encountered. The ships themselves appear to be using technology we do not understand. Tejo felt a strange stirring in his chest. It might have been hope, but he had forgotten what hope felt like. How many ships? He asked. Approximately 200 vessels of various sizes. They will reach coalition space within 10 days if they maintain their current speed and heading. The assembly erupted in excited conversation. New aliens meant new technology, new weapons, new possibilities. For the first time in years, there was something other than despair in the air. But Tejo was an experienced military commander. He had learned not to trust in miracles. Have they responded to our communications? He asked. Not directly, Waymin said. But our analysts have detected what appears to be military chatter among their ships. They seem to be discussing something they call contact protocols and rules of engagement. They are armed then, General So Young observed. Yes. Our sensors indicate they carry weapons, but we cannot determine their nature or capabilities. The debate began again, but with a different tone. Hope was a dangerous thing. It made people think they could win when logic said they should surrender. But hope was also the only thing that kept civilizations fighting when all seemed lost. As Tejo left the assembly hall, he found himself wondering about these mysterious newcomers. Where had they come from? What did they want? And most importantly, could they succeed where the coalition had failed? Outside the great windows of Sanctuary Station, the stars seemed a little brighter than before. Somewhere among them, strangers were approaching with unknown intentions and impossible technology. The war had been lost for 3 centuries. Perhaps it was time for something new to change that. The alarm bells rang throughout Sanctuary Station at exactly 0347 hours. Admiral Tejo was pulled from restless sleep by the emergency klaxons that meant only one thing. The swarm had been detected. He rushed to the command center, still pulling on his uniform. The main display showed the Keth system, 3 days' journey from Sanctuary. Red dots moved across the screen like drops of blood in water. Report, he ordered Captain Yuna, who was already at her station. A swarm hunting pack found the refugees from Colony 7, she said grimly. 15 bioships are attacking the evacuation convoy. The survivors are requesting immediate assistance. Tejo studied the tactical display. The convoy consisted of civilian transports carrying nearly 1 million beings. They were defended by only 6 coalition warships. Against 15 swarm bioships, they had no chance. How long until our relief fleet can reach them? He asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, replied Commander Dongsik. Too long. The convoy would be consumed long before help arrived. Tejo had seen this scenario play out hundreds of times. By the time coalition forces arrived, there would be nothing left but empty space and swarm ships grown fat on their feast. Sir, called Lieutenant Haywan from the communication station. I am receiving strange signals from the Keth system. Multiple sources broadcasting on primitive radio frequencies. The mystery fleet? Tejo asked, suddenly alert. I believe so, sir. The signals are getting stronger. They appear to be moving toward the battle. On the main display, new contacts appeared near the Keth system. Blue dots moved at impossible speeds toward the red swarm signatures. The unknown fleet had arrived just as the massacre began. "Get me a communication link to the convoy," Tejo ordered. "I want to know what is happening." The view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the transport ship Starlight. Captain Boram looked exhausted and frightened. Behind him, other crew members worked frantically at their stations. "Admiral, thank the ancestors you have contacted us," Boram said. "We are under heavy attack. My escort ships are taking severe damage. We need immediate evacuation." "Help is on the way, Captain. Can you hold for 18 hours? 18 hours? Boram's face went pale. "Sir, we will be lucky to survive 18 minutes. The swarm ships are unlike anything we have seen before. They seem to be learning from each of our attacks." Suddenly, the image shook violently. Sparks flew from damaged consoles and the lights flickered. "Direct hit to the main transport," someone shouted in the background. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. "Admiral," Boram said urgently, "we are detecting new contacts approaching our position. Unknown ships moving at incredible velocity. Are these your reinforcements?" Before Tejo could answer, the tactical display at Sanctuary Station showed something impossible. The blue dots representing the mystery fleet had engaged the swarm bioships, and the swarm ships were dying. "Captain, are you seeing weapons fire from the unknown vessels?" Tejo asked. "Yes, sir, but nothing like our energy weapons. These newcomers are using some kind of controlled explosions, massive bursts of energy that seem to tear holes in space itself." Lieutenant Haywan looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Sir, I am reading nuclear fusion signatures from the battle zone. The unknown ships appear to be using fusion reactions as weapons. Nuclear weapons had been banned by coalition law for over 2 centuries. They were considered too destructive and too dangerous for civilized warfare. The idea that someone would use them in space combat was shocking." On the view screen, Captain Boram was staring at something off camera. His expression had changed from fear to amazement. "Admiral, you need to see this. One of the unknown ships just rammed itself directly through a swarm mothership. The entire vessel exploded in what I can only describe as a miniature star." The tactical display confirmed it. One of the blue dots had collided with a large red signature. Both contacts disappeared in a massive energy bloom that temporarily blinded the sensors. "Sir," reported Commander Dong-sik, "we are detecting multiple nuclear detonations in the Keth system. The unknown fleet appears to be using suicide attacks against swarm positions." Suicide attacks. The coalition military had protocols against such tactics. They were wasteful and barbaric. No civilized species would sacrifice ships and crews so casually. "Captain Boram, what is the status of the swarm forces?" Tejo asked. "Sir, 11 of the 15 bioships have been destroyed. The remaining 4 are attempting to retreat, but the unknown vessels are pursuing them. I have never seen anything like this. These newcomers fight like demons." As they watched, the last swarm bioships were hunted down and destroyed. The unknown fleet had won a complete victory in less than 20 minutes. The coalition's most recent battle against a similar swarm force had lasted 6 hours and ended in defeat. "Admiral," Boram continued, "we are being hailed by the lead unknown vessel. They are requesting permission to come alongside." "Granted immediately," Tejo ordered. "And Captain, record everything. We need to document first contact with these beings." The view screen split to show 2 images. On one side, the Starlight's bridge remained visible. On the other, a new scene appeared. The bridge of the unknown ship was dark and functional. Control panels glowed with red and orange lights. Everything looked built for war. The being who appeared on screen was humanoid, but clearly not from any known species. Its skin was pale and its hair was dark. It wore some kind of military uniform, covered in insignia that meant nothing to coalition observers. "This is Admiral Bongsu of the United Earthship Retribution," the being said in heavily accented but understandable coalition standard. "We have cleared the immediate threat to your convoy. Are there injured among your people?" Earth. Tejo had never heard of such a world, and the being's appearance was strangely familiar, yet alien at the same time. "I am Admiral Tejo of the Coalition Defense Force," he replied. "On behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I thank you for your assistance. May I ask what species you represent?" "We are human," Bongsu replied simply. We come from a system on the galactic rim that your people call Sol. We have been watching your war for some time." "Watching our war?" Teho asked, confused. "Yes. We have observed the Void Swarm's expansion for 300 of your cycles. We have been preparing." The implications hit Teho like a physical blow. These humans had known about the swarm for 3 centuries, but had never made contact. They had watched billions die while they prepared in secret. "Why did you not contact us sooner?" he asked, trying to keep accusation out of his voice. Admiral Bong Su's expression hardened. "Because we needed to be certain we could win. Your coalition fights with rules and limitations. The swarm does not. We have spent 300 years learning how to match their brutality." "Match their brutality?" "Admiral Teho, your people try to minimize casualties and preserve infrastructure. These are admirable goals against civilized enemies. The swarm is not civilized. They are a plague that must be burned out completely." On the tactical display, more human ships were arriving in the Keth system. Dozens of them, all heavily armed and moving with purpose. "We did not come here to save your coalition," Bong Su continued. "We came here to exterminate the swarm. Your survival is secondary to that goal." The blunt statement sent chills through everyone in Sanctuary Station's command center. These humans spoke of extermination as casually as others might discuss the weather. "Admiral Bong Su," Teho said carefully, "perhaps we should meet in person to discuss our mutual interests." "Agreed. I will dock with your Sanctuary Station in 4 days. Prepare your war council. We have much to discuss and very little time." The communication ended, leaving Teho staring at a blank screen. Around him, his staff worked quietly, processing the incredible events of the past hour. Humanity had arrived. They carried weapons that violated every treaty the Coalition had ever signed. They fought with a savagery that matched the swarm itself, and they spoke of extermination like it was a simple military objective. For the first time in 3 centuries, the swarm had faced an enemy that could hurt them. But Teho wondered if humanity might prove to be as dangerous as the creatures they had come to fight. The war had suddenly become much more complicated. Admiral Teho had seen many battles in his long career, but nothing had prepared him for what he witnessed at Zerion Prime. The mining world had fallen to the swarm 2 weeks earlier. Standard Coalition doctrine called for a careful surgical strike to retake the planet while preserving the valuable mining equipment. The humans had different ideas. Admiral Kyung-ho commanded the human assault fleet from his flagship Devastation. When Teho suggested they coordinate their attack to minimize damage to the infrastructure, the human officer looked at him with cold eyes. "Admiral, you still do not understand," Kyung-ho said. "There is no infrastructure worth saving on an infected world. There are only targets to be eliminated." The human fleet took position around Zerion Prime. Teho watched from his observation ship as they began their bombardment. What he saw violated every rule of civilized warfare. Instead of precision strikes, the humans carpet bombed the entire planet. They used fusion weapons that turned mountain ranges into glass. They deployed something they called planet crackers that sent shockwaves deep into the world's core. "Sir," reported Captain Yuna from the sensor station, "the humans are destabilizing the planet's geological structure. The core temperature is rising rapidly." "Are they trying to cause a volcanic eruption?" asked Commander Dongsik. The answer came 20 minutes later. Zerion Prime's crust cracked like an eggshell. Molten rock sprayed into space as the planet's core collapsed. The artificial earthquake created a chain reaction that turned the entire world into a miniature star. The explosion was visible from 3 systems away. When the light faded, Zerion Prime was gone. In its place was an expanding cloud of superheated gas. The 3 swarm hive ships that had been feeding on the planet were vaporized. Instantly. "By the ancestors," whispered Captain Yuna. "They destroyed an entire world." Admiral Kyung-ho's voice came over the communication channel, calm and matter-of-fact. "Zerion Prime has been sterilized. The swarm infection has been eliminated. We are proceeding to the next target." Teho opened a private channel to the human flagship. "Admiral, that planet contained enough rare minerals to fund our war effort for decades. Why did you destroy it?" "Because the swarm had been there," Kyung-ho replied simply. "Any technology they touch becomes contaminated. Any world they infest must be cleansed completely. There are no exceptions. But surely some of the infrastructure could have been saved. Kyung-ho's expression grew hard. Admiral Tae-ho, let me share something from human history. When our ancestors fought a species called the Carthaginians, they did not just defeat them. They destroyed their cities, killed their people, and salted the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. Do you know why? No. Because they understood that some enemies cannot be allowed to return. The swarm is such an enemy. We will not merely defeat them. We will erase every trace of their existence from this galaxy. The conversation ended, leaving Tae-ho deeply disturbed. The humans fought like they had no intention of ever making peace. They waged war as if the only acceptable outcome was the complete extinction of their enemy. Over the following weeks, Tae-ho observed more human operations. Each one was more brutal than the last. At the Kelvani system, Major Hyo-jin used biological weapons that corrupted swarm genetics from within. The bioships literally ate themselves as their own DNA turned against them. Is this not a violation of your biological weapons treaties? Tae-ho asked during a joint planning session. Major Hyo-jin, a small woman with scars covering half her face, looked at him with amusement. Admiral, the swarm wants to consume every living thing in the galaxy. You worry about treaty violations. This is why you have been losing for 300 years. At the Nexus shipping lanes, Colonel Wanbin deployed nanomachines that consumed matter at the molecular level. Swarm bioships simply dissolved into their component atoms. The weapons were so effective that coalition observers initially thought the enemy ships had simply disappeared. These nanomachines, Commander Dong-sik said during the tactical briefing, they could theoretically consume organic matter indefinitely. Are you not concerned about losing control of them? Colonel Wanbin activated a remote control device. In space, the nanomachines stopped their expansion and self-destructed in flashes of light. We build all our weapons with kill switches, Commander. We are not stupid. We are simply willing to use tools that you consider too dangerous. The most shocking incident occurred at the Helix Nebula. Captain Dalho's strike force encountered a Swarm Queen ship, a massive bioconstruct that served as both command vessel and breeding facility. Coalition doctrine called for the capture of such valuable targets for intelligence gathering. The humans did something else entirely. They captured the Queen ship intact, but instead of studying it, they performed what they called enhanced interrogation. Captain Dalho explained it to horrified Coalition observers. We are conducting vivisection on the Queen while broadcasting her death sounds across all swarm communication frequencies, he said matter-of-factly. The psychological impact on enemy forces has been significant. You are torturing a sentient being, protested Coalition Ambassador Soo-jin. No, Dalho replied. We are demonstrating to the swarm that capture by humans is worse than death. It is a message. Submit to us and die quickly or resist and suffer eternally. The strategy worked. For the first time in Coalition history, swarm forces began retreating without being forced to. Entire fleets abandoned strategic positions rather than face human assault forces. The enemy's morale, something Coalition scientists had thought impossible to effect, was breaking. But the cost of these victories troubled many Coalition leaders. At an emergency session on Sanctuary Station, Admiral Tae-ho voiced the concerns that many felt but few dared speak. The humans are effective, he told the assembled council, but their methods are becoming increasingly extreme. They show no regard for civilian casualties, environmental protection, or the laws of war. High Chancellor Wei Min nodded gravely. I have reviewed their tactical reports. In 6 weeks, they have achieved more victories than we managed in 6 years. But they have also committed what we would classify as war crimes in every single engagement. General So-young, who had been working closely with human forces, stood to speak. With respect, Chancellor, we cannot apply our peacetime standards to this conflict. The swarm does not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. Fighting them with conventional ethics is like bringing flowers to a nuclear war. But where does it end? Asked Councillor Haewon. If we abandon our principles to win this war, what kind of civilization will be left when it is over? The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued that victory at any cost was preferable to extinction. Others worried that the cure might be worse than the disease. During a break in the session, Tae-ho sought out General So-young for a private conversation. General, you have worked more closely with the humans than anyone. What is your honest assessment of their intentions? So-young was quiet for a long moment. They mean exactly what they say, Admiral. They intend to exterminate the swarm completely. Not defeat them, not drive them back. Exterminate them. And after the swarm is gone, I do not know. The humans speak of going home to their distant worlds, but they have built a war machine capable of conquering galaxies. Whether they will simply dismantle it and return to peaceful pursuits, she shrugged. That remains to be seen. That evening, Tejo stood in his quarters looking out at the stars. Somewhere among them, human fleets were conducting their brutal campaign against the swarm. Every day brought news of new victories, achieved through methods that shocked and horrified coalition observers. The humans had proven that the swarm could be beaten, but in doing so, they had revealed themselves to be as ruthless and implacable as the enemy they fought. They showed no mercy, followed no rules, and seemed to view the complete destruction of their enemies as the only acceptable outcome. For 3 centuries, the coalition had fought with honor and lost with dignity. Now they were winning with methods that violated every principle they claimed to represent. Tejo wondered if survival was worth such a price, and he wondered what would happen when there were no more swarm left to fight, but humanity's war machine still existed, hungry for new enemies to destroy. The war was turning in their favor. But victory, when it came, might prove to be more terrifying than defeat had ever been. General Su Jin stood before the holographic display showing the latest battle reports. Red zones marked former swarm territory now under human control, but control was the wrong word. The humans did not occupy conquered systems, they sterilized them. Report on the Centauri operation, she ordered Captain Dalho. Complete success, General. All 7 planets in the system have been cleansed. We use the Carthage protocol as ordered. Admiral Tejo, observing from his position as coalition liaison, felt his stomach turn. The Carthage protocol was humanity's most extreme tactic. After clearing swarm forces from a system, they would seed the local star with exotic matter. The star would go supernova within days, sterilizing everything within several light years. Casualties? Su Jin asked. Minimal. 3 ships damaged, no personnel lost. The star conversion proceeded as planned. The system is now a dead zone that nothing can cross for the next 1,000,000 years. Tejo could not stay silent. General, that system contained 4 habitable worlds. With time and terraforming, they could have supported billions of coalition citizens. Su Jin looked at him with cold eyes. Admiral, those worlds were contaminated by swarm presence. The soil, the water, even the air molecules had been processed through their biological systems. Would you want your people living on planets where the swarm had fed? Surely decontamination procedures do not exist, interrupted Colonel Yu Jin from her position at the tactical station. The swarm changes everything they touch at the molecular level. There is no cleaning such contamination. There is only fire. Yu Jin had become famous throughout the human fleet for her innovative weapons. She had developed the void bombs that created temporary black holes, consuming entire swarm fleets in seconds. Her latest creation was even more terrifying. Show the Admiral our new deployment, Su Jin ordered. The holographic display shifted to show the Vega system where a massive swarm fleet had gathered. Over 200 bioships filled the space around the dying star, feeding on its energy to fuel their reproduction. We tried conventional assault, Yu Jin explained. The swarm concentration was too dense. Casualties would have been severe. So we used the singularity drive instead. Tejo watched as a single human ship approached the edge of the system. It was smaller than a destroyer, barely larger than a shuttle. As he watched, it began to accelerate toward the center of the swarm fleet. What is that ship doing? He asked. Creating a new star, Yu Jin replied calmly. The small ship reached impossible speeds as it dove into the heart of the swarm formation. When it reached the center, it exploded. But this was not a normal explosion. Space itself seemed to tear open, creating a wound in reality that pulled everything nearby into crushing darkness. The improvised black hole consumed the entire swarm fleet in less than 10 minutes. 200 bioships, some the size of small moons, simply disappeared into the hungry void. When the weapon finally exhausted itself, nothing remained but empty space. The singularity drive uses our ship's entire antimatter supply to create a temporary black hole, Yu Jin explained. The gravitational field is intense enough to trap even light. Nothing escapes. But the crew, Tejo said, horrified. They died with their ship. They volunteered, Su Jin said simply. Captain Minho and his crew knew the mission was one way. They considered it an honor to die destroying so many enemies. This was what disturbed Tejo most about the humans. They did not just use extreme weapons. They seemed eager to die using them. Human crews volunteered for suicide missions with enthusiasm that bordered on madness. "General," he said carefully, "your people seem remarkably willing to sacrifice themselves. Is this normal for human military culture?" "Admiral, let me tell you about human history," Sujin replied. "We are a species that has faced extinction multiple times. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, asteroid impacts, nuclear wars. Each time some of us survived by being willing to do whatever was necessary. No sacrifice was too great if it meant our species would continue." She gestured to the star charts showing human operations across the galaxy. "We have been preparing for this war for 300 years. Every human alive today was born to fight in this conflict. We have turned our entire civilization into a weapon designed for one purpose, the complete extermination of the swarm." Major Sangwoo approached with his latest intelligence report. His specialty was biological warfare, and his creations were particularly horrifying. He had developed viral weapons that turned swarm bioships against each other. "The viral deployment at Kepler Station was successful," he reported. "The infected swarm ships began consuming their own fleetmates within hours. The entire force was eliminated through cannibalistic frenzy." "Excellent," Sujin said. "How quickly can you produce more of the virus?" "We have sufficient supplies to infect 50 more swarm fleets. The beauty of this weapon is that it spreads through their biological communication networks. One infected ship can contaminate an entire armada." Tejo felt sick. "Major, that virus. Could it theoretically affect other biological entities? Coalition species, for instance?" Sangwoo smiled coldly. "Theoretically, yes. But we have designed it specifically for swarm biology. It would require significant modification to affect other life forms." "Modification that you could perform if ordered?" "Of course. A weapon that only kills your enemies is not really a weapon at all. It is just a tool. True weapons can kill anyone you point them at." The casual discussion of genocide against coalition species made Tejo's blood run cold. These humans spoke of biological weapons that could wipe out entire civilizations as if they were discussing the weather. "General Sujin," he said formally, "I must ask directly. Do your people intend to use these weapons against coalition forces?" "That depends," she replied. "Do coalition forces intend to interfere with our mission to exterminate the swarm? What if we simply want to negotiate a peaceful resolution to this conflict?" Sujin laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Admiral, the swarm does not negotiate. They consume. You cannot make peace with a virus. You can only cure it or die from it." She activated the main display showing the current tactical situation. Human forces now controlled nearly a third of former swarm territory. But controlled was still the wrong word. They had simply turned those regions into dead zones where nothing could live. "We estimate 18 more months to complete the extermination," she continued. "The swarm is retreating toward the galactic core where they have concentrated their breeding facilities. That is where we will make our final assault." "And after the swarm is extinct?" Tejo asked. "What happens to the human fleet?" "We go home," Sujin said. "Back to our worlds on the galactic rim. We have no interest in conquest or empire. We came here to eliminate a threat to all intelligent life. When that threat is gone, our mission will be complete." Tejo wanted to believe her, but he had seen the human war machine in action. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that could destroy stars and unravel matter itself. Such power did not simply disappear when its original purpose was fulfilled. "General, forgive me, but your weapons are now capable of destroying any force in the galaxy. How can we be certain you will not decide that other species represent threats that need to be eliminated?" For the first time, Sujin's expression softened slightly. "Admiral, do you know what humans call this campaign?" "No." "The last war. We believe that if we do this correctly, it will be the final conflict our species ever has to fight. We will make the galaxy so safe that war itself becomes obsolete. By killing everything that might threaten peace. By demonstrating that some actions have consequences so severe that no rational being would ever attempt them. The swarm chose to be an extinction-level threat to all sentient life. We are showing the universe what happens to extinction-level threats." Tejo studied the human general's face. There was no doubt, no hesitation, no mercy. She truly believed that what they were doing was necessary. More than that, she believed it was righteous. "You are creating a galaxy ruled by fear," he said quietly. "Yes," she agreed. Fear of us. And that fear will keep the peace for 1,000,000 years after we are gone. No species will ever again consider becoming an extinction-level threat, because they will remember what happened to the last ones who tried. As Tejo left the briefing, he realized that humanity had already won the war, not just against the swarm, but against any future enemy that might threaten the galaxy. They were creating a peace enforced by the memory of absolute destruction. The question was whether any civilization would survive long enough to enjoy that peace, or if humanity would decide that true safety required them to be the only intelligent species left alive. The humans had come to save the galaxy, but salvation delivered by such brutal means looked remarkably similar to conquest. Admiral Changmin stood before the massive display showing the assembled human fleet. 10,000 ships filled the void around Sanctuary Station, battleships the size of cities, carriers loaded with fighter craft and support vessels carrying weapons that defied description. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The Exodus fleet is ready for deployment, he announced to the Joint Command Council. Coalition leaders watched in amazement as the impossible armada prepared for what humans called the final hunt. Admiral Tejo studied the fleet composition with growing unease. Admiral Changmin, this force is larger than some coalition member navies. You built all of this in preparation for this war? Not built, Admiral, prepared. These ships and their crews have been training for 300 years for this single mission. Every human aboard these vessels was born with one purpose: to hunt the swarm to extinction, no matter how long it takes or how far we must travel. Captain Boram of the Deep Space Reconnaissance Division approached with her latest report. Her ships had been tracking swarm movements for months, following pheromone trails and energy signatures across impossible distances. The swarm retreat has accelerated, she announced. Our long-range sensors indicate they are moving beyond the galactic edge, into the void between galaxies. They appear to be returning to their point of origin. How far beyond the edge? Asked Commander Dongsik. Approximately 2 million light-years from the galactic rim. In the empty space between our galaxy and the next closest spiral galaxy. Tejo felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral Changmin, surely you do not intend to pursue them into intergalactic space. The distances involved, the resources required. The swarm must be eliminated completely, Changmin replied without hesitation. If we allow any to escape, they will return in 1,000 years or 10,000 years. This threat ends now, or it continues forever. The human admiral activated a holographic projection showing the current intelligence on swarm positions. The enemy forces had concentrated in a single location far beyond the galactic edge. Deep space telescopes revealed something that defied comprehension. What am I looking at? Asked High Chancellor Wayman. Captain Boram manipulated the display controls. Our analysis indicates the swarm has constructed some kind of megastructure. The object appears to be the size of a solar system but shows signs of being artificial. A solar system-sized artificial construct? Tejo said incredulously. That is impossible. Nevertheless, it exists, Boram continued. Energy readings suggest it contains breeding facilities, manufacturing centers, and what we can only describe as a fleet construction complex. We estimate it could produce 1,000,000 bioships per year if fully operational. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. This was not just a swarm retreat. It was a regrouping at their primary base of operations, a facility that could rebuild their entire force in a matter of decades. How long has this structure existed? Asked General So-Young. Unknown, but our xenoarchaeology specialists believe it predates the current galactic civilization by millions of years. The swarm may have been using this base to launch invasions across cosmic time. Changmin nodded grimly. This confirms our worst suspicions. The swarm is not native to our galaxy. They are an intergalactic plague that moves from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything before moving on to the next target. If that is true, Tejo said slowly, then they have destroyed countless civilizations across the universe. Billions of worlds, trillions of sentient beings. Which is why they must be stopped here and now, Changmin replied. We are probably not the first galaxy to fight them. But we will be the last. The coalition leaders exchanged worried glances. The scope of the threat had suddenly expanded beyond anything they had imagined. This was not just a war for their galaxy. It was a war for the entire universe. Admiral, High Chancellor Wayman said carefully, the coalition appreciates humanity's dedication to this cause, but surely an assault on such a massive target is beyond even your capabilities. Changmin smiled coldly. Chancellor, we have spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly this scenario. We always suspected the swarm had a central nest. We have developed weapons specifically designed to destroy targets of this magnitude. He gestured to his aide, Colonel J1, who activated a classified display. The weapon specifications that appeared made even the hardened coalition military officers gasp in shock. Project Vacuum Decay, J1 explained. We have learned to weaponize entropy itself. This device can unravel matter at the quantum level, causing a cascade effect that spreads at the speed of light. You are talking about unmaking reality itself, Tejo said in horror. Yes, in a localized area. The weapon will destroy the swarm megastructure and everything within a radius of several light years. It will also make that region of space permanently uninhabitable. What if you miscalculate? Asked Commander Dongsik. What if the cascade effect does not stop? Then we will have succeeded in making the universe safe from the swarm, Changmin replied calmly. The risk is acceptable given the consequences of failure. General So Young stood up, her face pale. Admiral, you are talking about a weapon that could theoretically destroy the entire universe if it malfunctions. Yes, and we are going to use it. The room fell silent. The humans were proposing to risk the existence of reality itself to ensure the swarm's complete destruction. It was a level of commitment that bordered on insanity. There must be alternatives, Tejo said desperately. Containment, perhaps. We could establish a blockade around the megastructure. For how long? Changmin asked. 1,000 years? 1,000,000? Eventually our civilization will fall or forget. The swarm will escape and begin their cycle of destruction again. The only permanent solution is extinction. Captain Boram brought up additional sensor data. Admiral, there is something else. Our deep space reconnaissance has detected energy signatures consistent with portal technology. The megastructure appears to have the capability of opening passages to other galaxies. They are planning their next invasion, Changmin concluded.
While we debate ethics and alternatives,
they are preparing to spread to other galaxies and consume civilizations we have never even imagined. The weight of that revelation settled over the Council like a physical force. Somewhere in distant galaxies, billions of beings live their lives unaware that an extinction-level threat was preparing to visit them, unless the humans succeeded in their impossible mission. How long will the Exodus fleet take to reach the target? Asked Wayman. 6 months at maximum speed, Changmin replied. The fleet is equipped with advanced life support systems and manufacturing facilities. We can operate independently for decades if necessary, and if you do not return, then you will know we succeeded. If the swarm escapes destruction, they will return to this galaxy within years. If we win, the universe will be safe forever. Colonel J1 approached with final deployment orders. Admiral, the fleet commanders are ready for departure. All ships report full readiness for extended operations. Changmin nodded. Signal the fleet to begin departure sequence. All vessels are to maintain communication silence until we reach the target zone. As the enormous human fleet began to move, Tejo watched from Sanctuary Station's observation deck. 10,000 ships accelerated away from the galaxy, carrying humanity's entire military might into the unknown void beyond. General So Young, he said to the human officer standing beside him, do you really believe they can succeed? I believe they will try, she replied quietly. And I believe they would rather destroy the universe than let the swarm survive to threaten it again. Is that not madness? Perhaps. But it is human madness. And sometimes madness is the only sane response to an insane universe. The Exodus fleet disappeared into the darkness between galaxies, carrying with them the hopes and fears of every sentient being in known space. They went not just to fight the swarm, but to face the source of the greatest threat the universe had ever known. Behind them, they left a galaxy that would either be permanently safe or permanently empty. There was no middle ground in humanity's definition of victory. The final hunt had begun. The final battle began 6 months after the Exodus fleet disappeared into the void between galaxies. Admiral Tejo received the first transmission from Admiral Changmin as coalition forces monitored helplessly from their distant home. This is Changmin reporting from the edge of reality. The human commander's voice crackled across impossible distances. We have found them. The swarm megastructure is beyond anything we imagined. It is not just a base. It is a living universe unto itself. The transmission included sensor data that made coalition scientists question the laws of physics. The swarm construct was the size of a solar system but appeared to be alive. Billions of bioships moved through passages inside its structure like blood cells through veins. The entire thing pulsed with organic rhythms. Fleet Admiral In-ho will lead the main assault, Chang Min continued. All ships are to proceed with maximum aggression. There will be no retreat, no prisoners, no mercy. This ends today. Admiral Tae-ho watched the tactical display as 10,000 human ships engaged an enemy force beyond counting. The swarm had been building strength for millions of years. Their numbers seemed infinite. The first phase of the battle lasted for days. Human ships dove into swarm formations like bullets fired into water. Each vessel fought with suicidal intensity, seeking to inflict maximum damage before inevitable destruction. Captain Hyojin achieved legendary status in the first hour of combat. Her destroyer Righteous Fury had lost its main weapons, but she continued the attack anyway. Coalition observers watched in amazement as she piloted her crippled ship directly into the heart of the swarm megastructure. This is Hyojin to all human forces, her final transmission read. I am initiating core breach inside the enemy primary structure. Tell my family I died with honor. Her ship's antimatter core detonated inside the megastructure's central chambers. The explosion tore a wound in reality itself, creating a hole several kilometers wide in the enemy base. Through that wound, space and time bled like an open artery. The Coalition Command Center on Sanctuary Station fell silent as they processed what they had witnessed. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to take as many enemies with them as possible when they died. Sir, reported Captain Yuna, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the battle zone. Human casualties are approaching 70%. 70%. In any normal military engagement, such losses would trigger an immediate retreat. But the human fleet continued fighting as if casualties were irrelevant. Major Sungmin's Marines achieved the impossible by boarding active swarm bioships during the height of battle. His final report described close-quarters combat inside living enemy vessels, where humans fought with flamethrowers and explosives, against organic corridors that tried to digest them. The swarm does not understand individual sacrifice, Sungmin's transmission reported. They fight as a collective seeking to preserve the whole. We fight as individuals willing to die for something greater than ourselves. This gives us an advantage they cannot comprehend. The Major's unit was lost when they detonated their ship's reactor core, while still inside an enemy mothership. The explosion destroyed 17 swarm vessels and cleared a path for the main human assault. As the battle raged, Colonel Minho prepared humanity's ultimate weapon. The vacuum decay device was the size of a small ship and required precise positioning within the enemy megastructure to function properly. Colonel Minho to Fleet Command, his voice came through static and interference. I am in position to deploy the final solution. The weapon is armed and ready. All human forces should withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. But there was no safe distance from a weapon that could unravel reality itself. The human fleet had known from the beginning that this would be a one-way mission. Admiral Chang Min to all ships, the fleet commander's final transmission declared. It has been an honor to serve with you. Our sacrifice today ensures that children throughout the universe will never know the terror of the swarm. Hold your positions. Do not let any enemy escape. The human ships formed a wall around the swarm megastructure. As the vacuum decay weapon activated, space itself began to die. Matter dissolved into quantum foam. Energy patterns unraveled like pulled threads. Reality simply ceased to exist in an expanding sphere of absolute nothing. The swarm megastructure, built over millions of years and containing the accumulated power of a dozen consumed galaxies, took 3 minutes to completely disappear. The bioships, the breeding facilities, the portal generators that could reach other galaxies. All of it dissolved into fundamental particles, and then into nothing at all. Admiral Tae-ho watched the sensor, readings from Sanctuary Station as the cascade of destruction spread outward. For terrifying moments, it seemed like the unmaking might continue indefinitely, consuming star systems and eventually reaching their own galaxy. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the effect stopped. The weapon had been designed with precise limitations, and those safeguards held. A sphere of empty space marked where the greatest threat in universal history had once existed. Of the 10,000 human ships that had begun the mission, fewer than 100 survived the final battle. These remnants limped back toward Coalition space, carrying the wounded and the traumatized witnesses to humanity's greatest victory. The returning fleet was commanded by Fleet Admiral Wu Bin, a woman whose hair had turned white during the battle, and whose eyes held depths of experience that made coalition observers uncomfortable. "Admiral," Taeho asked during their first debriefing, "was the price worth it?" Wu Bin stared out at the stars for a long moment before answering. "Ask me again when the last star dies and there are still free beings alive to see it happen. Then we will know if what we did was right." The survivors of the Exodus fleet returned to human space, carrying weapons and knowledge that frightened even their own people. They had stared into the abyss of extinction and emerged victorious, but the experience had changed them in ways that would take generations to understand. In the years that followed, the galaxy began to heal. Coalition worlds were rebuilt. New species joined the Alliance. Trade routes reopened across space that had been dark for centuries. But everyone understood that this peace had been purchased with human blood and human souls. The humans kept their promise to return home to their distant worlds. But they also maintained a watching presence throughout the galaxy. Silent ships patrolled the void between stars. Sensor networks monitored for any sign of new threats. Weapons capable of destroying reality itself waited in hidden bunkers. "We have made the galaxy safe," Admiral Wu Bin explained to the Coalition Council during humanity's formal withdrawal ceremony. "But safety requires eternal vigilance. We will be watching." The ceremony was held on Sanctuary Station 1 year after the final battle. Representatives from every coalition species gathered to honor the human sacrifice and formally recognize the end of the Swarm War. High Chancellor Wei Min presented Admiral Wu Bin with the coalition's highest honor, the Star of Eternal Gratitude. As she accepted the medal, the human admiral's words chilled everyone present. "We did not fight this war to be heroes," she said quietly. "We fought it because extinction is the only alternative to victory. Remember that lesson. There are worse things in the universe than the swarm. And when they come, as they inevitably will, remember what the price of survival truly costs." The human fleet departed the next day, leaving behind a galaxy that was safer than it had ever been. But they also left behind the knowledge that such safety could only be maintained through the willingness to become monsters when necessary. Admiral Taeho, now promoted to head of Coalition Defense Forces, often visited the memorial gardens that had been built on former battlefields. Each garden contained a simple monument with the same inscription in 100 languages. "Here lies the price of peace." The children who played in those gardens would grow up in a universe where the greatest threat to intelligent life had been completely eliminated. They would never know the terror their parents had faced. They would never understand what had been sacrificed to ensure their freedom. But in the deep space between galaxies, where reality itself had been wounded by humanity's final weapon, the darkness remembered, and somewhere in that darkness, Admiral Taeho suspected, human ships still patrolled the void, watching for threats that had not yet been imagined. The war had been lost for 3 centuries. Then humans arrived with fire and absolute destruction, and victory was achieved at a cost that would echo through eternity. The galaxy was safe. The price of that safety was humanity's innocence, willingly sacrificed so that others could sleep peacefully in their beds, never knowing what guardians watched over their dreams. 10 years had passed since the final battle in the void between galaxies. Admiral Taeho, now elderly and bearing the weight of too many memories, stood in the memorial gardens on New Kyoto. The human colony world had been rebuilt after swarm devastation, and these gardens marked where the worst fighting had occurred. Children played among flowers that grew in soil once soaked with blood. Their laughter echoed off monuments that bore the names of the fallen. They ran past statues depicting human soldiers in their final moments, forever frozen in acts of sacrifice that had saved civilizations. "Beautiful, is it not?" said a familiar voice behind him. Taeho turned to see Fleet Admiral Wu Bin approaching along the garden path. She looked older than her years, her hair now completely white and her eyes holding depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies of sorrow. "Admiral," Taeho said, bowing respectfully, "I did not expect to see you here." "I come here every year on this date," she replied, "to remember what we became so that they could remain innocent." They walked together through the gardens in comfortable silence. Around them, coalition families enjoyed peaceful afternoons that would have been impossible during the dark centuries of the Swarm War. Merchants from dozens of species traded freely. Scientists shared knowledge without fear of extinction. Artists created beauty instead of weapons. The galaxy has healed well, Tejo observed. On the surface, Wu Bin agreed. But the scars run deep. Do you know what our children ask when they learn about the war? What do they ask? They ask why it was necessary to become monsters to defeat monsters. They ask if there was another way. Tejo stopped walking and faced the human admiral. What do you tell them? I tell them that some questions can only be answered by those who were not there. We who fought the war are too close to judge our own actions. History will decide if we were heroes or villains. They paused before a memorial wall containing the names of every human who had died in the final battle. The list seemed endless, covering stone surfaces that stretched beyond sight. Each name represented someone who had chosen extinction over surrender. Do you regret it? Tejo asked quietly. Wu Bin considered the question for a long time. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the universe is cruel enough to require such choices. But the decision itself? No. I would make it again tomorrow if the need arose. A young coalition family approached the memorial. The parents, members of the peaceful Catherian species, explained to their children what the wall represented. The children listened with wide eyes, unable to comprehend violence on such a scale. They cannot understand, the father said apologetically to the two admirals. My children have never known war. To them it is like a fairy tale. That is as it should be, Wu Bin replied gently. We fought so they would never have to understand. After the family moved on, Tejo and Wu Bin continued their walk through the gardens. They passed sections dedicated to different aspects of the war. The diplomatic quarter honored those who had tried to find peaceful solutions. The scientific district remembered researchers who had developed new technologies. The military memorial recognized warriors from every coalition species, but the largest section was reserved for humanity's contribution. Not just the soldiers who had died, but the entire civilization that had transformed itself into a weapon. Displays showed human worlds converted to military production. Schools that taught warfare alongside literature, children who grew up knowing they were born to fight an enemy that consumed galaxies. Your people sacrificed more than lives, Tejo said. You sacrificed your entire way of being. Yes, we became what we needed to become to win. Some would say we became no better than the swarm itself. Do you believe that? Wu Bin stopped before a statue of a human child holding both a flower and a sword. The inscription read, We carry both creation and destruction that others might know only beauty. The swarm consumed without choice or conscience, she said finally. They were driven by instinct to devour everything. We chose to become destroyers. Choice makes all the difference. A communication device chimed softly. Wu Bin activated it to reveal the face of Captain Dalho, now commander of humanity's Deep Space Monitoring Network. Admiral, we have detected anomalous readings from the Andromeda sector. Long-range sensors indicate possible organized movement of unknown vessels. Tejo felt his blood run cold. New threats? Unknown at this time, Dalho replied. Could be natural phenomena or technological signatures from an undiscovered civilization. We are dispatching reconnaissance vessels to investigate. Keep me informed, Wu Bin ordered, and activate Protocol 7. All deep space stations are to increase sensor sweeps immediately. The communication ended, leaving both admirals staring at the device in heavy silence. It never ends, does it? Tejo asked. No. The universe is vast and old and full of dangers we have never imagined. We eliminated one threat, but others remain. Others will always remain. And if this new contact proves hostile? Wu Bin's expression hardened in a way that reminded Tejo of the woman who had ordered the extermination of entire star systems. Then we will do what we have always done. We will become what we need to become to protect what we love. They continued walking through the gardens as the afternoon light began to fade. Around them, families gathered for evening meals. Children collected flowers while their parents discussed peaceful pursuits like art and philosophy and trade agreements. None of them knew that in hidden bunkers throughout the galaxy, weapons capable of unmaking reality waited in silent readiness. None of them suspected that human ships prowled the dark spaces between stars, watching for threats that had not yet revealed themselves. The children ask another question, Wu Bin said as they neared the garden's exit. They ask if we are still human after what we did. What do you tell them? I tell them that humanity was never about what we are. It was always about what we choose to do. And we chose to ensure that children could play in gardens instead of hiding in bunkers. As they parted ways, Teho watched the human admiral disappear into the gathering darkness. She moved like a predator even in peaceful surroundings, forever alert for dangers that might threaten the civilization she had helped save. The galaxy was at peace. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Scientific discoveries improved lives across 100 species. Art and music flourished in ways that had been impossible during the dark centuries of war. But beneath that peace lay a foundation built from human bones and human souls. The price of safety had been the transformation of an entire species into something harder and colder and more ruthless than anything the galaxy had ever produced. The children playing in the memorial gardens would inherit a universe where the greatest known threat had been eliminated completely. They would never face the terror their parents had endured. They would never have to make the choices that had defined their protectors. That was the gift humanity had given to the galaxy. Not just victory over the swarm, but the promise that such horror would never again be allowed to threaten the innocent. And in the darkness between stars, human ships continued their eternal patrol, carrying weapons that could destroy gods and the will to use them against anything that threatened the peace their sacrifice had purchased. The war had been lost until humans arrived, with fire and absolute destruction. Now it was won. But the guardians who had secured that victory remained forever changed, forever watching, forever ready to become monsters again if the universe demanded it. In the memorial gardens, flowers bloomed where battles had raged, but the swords that had won those battles were never far from the hands of those who remembered the true price of peace.